according to Muhammad, in a revelation he claimed to have received from God, the sun sets in a pool of murky water. Now, the reason this is important is because Muslims, as their main argument for Islam nowadays, appeal to scientific accuracy, the amazing scientific accuracy of the Quran. And they usually don't bother to show people how the Quran is scientifically accurate. They walk up to people and tell people that, right? Because people in the West have a pretty high regard for science. And so Muslims come along and say, you see this book? It's filled with amazing scientific accuracies that no one could have known. No one could have known in Muhammad's time. No one knew them for centuries. No one knew them for centuries after Muhammad's time. It's only today that we are fully coming to grasp the amazing scientific insights in this book. And people convert based on hearing that, not realizing, wow, maybe I should actually bother to read the book and see what it says on various scientific topics to see whether this claim is true before I go ahead and convert to a religion. Well, I actually don't like nitpicking on every little scientific problem we might point out in the Quran, unless the argument is being made against me that this book is confirmed by science. Then we have to go through the claims it makes. But I want to address one right now that is very important because it's not something Muslims can reinterpret. Right? There are passages in the Quran that seem to be saying something obviously false. And a Muslim will want to say, well, what that really means is something completely different from what it says in Allah's perfectly clear word. Allah brags over and over again in the Quran that His word is perfectly clear. Muslims find something that's obviously false, and so they say, what He really meant was something totally different. And here we have a passage that is so obviously wrong that Muslims try to reinterpret it in our day. The problem is Muhammad himself gives the interpretation. And according to Islam, Sam, who is a greater interpreter of the Quran than Muhammad himself?
Actually, Muhammad is also called the walking Quran. Mm-hmm. He actually lives and breathes the Quran, so there is no greater authority on earth to explain the Quran than Muhammad.
So if Muhammad says this is what the Quran means, does a Muslim get to say, well, Muhammad's obviously wrong, I'm going to interpret it this way?
Unless they think that they're a prophet of a higher status than Muhammad, there is no way you can deny the words of Muhammad. Now, they may say that the narration itself is weak, or that the narration falsely attributes words to Muhammad, but we know they can't even appeal to that argument because what you're about to quote is deemed sahih, meaning sound, without any error or defect in its chain of transmission. So if you're going to call into question this so-called sound narration, then you're going to have to call into question the entire corpus of the hadith literature.
In which case, we don't know anything about Islam.
Exactly.
We don't know anything about Islam. We don't know anything about the formation of the Quran if you start throwing out
Precisely.
the narrations that describe how the Quran was formed. All right, well, let's look at the passage. This is chapter 18, verses 83 through 86 of the Quran. And they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Many Muslims say this is referring to Alexander the Great, but whoever it refers to, the same situation applies. And they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. Say, I shall recite to you something of his story. Verily, we established him in the earth. This is Allah speaking. Verily, we established him in the earth, and we gave him the means of everything. So he followed away, until when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a spring of black, muddy, or hot water, and he found near it a people. Notice what this is saying. He reached the setting place of the sun. So not only is there a setting place of the sun, you can actually get there. If you travel far enough, you can get to the place where the sun sets. There is a place where the sun sets. And where is this place? He found it setting in a spring of black, muddy, or hot water. And not only that, he found near it a people. So we have a couple of things here in this passage. One, there's a place where the sun sets. Two, Dhul Qarnayn, or Alexander the Great, gets to this place, and there are people who live there. Now, Sam, I don't know about you, but they taught me in science class that the sun is much bigger than the earth. Could the sun possibly set in a pool of water here on earth? And could there be people who live there? Every day the sun goes and sets in this pool, and they live right beside it. They're fine, right?
To even get that close to the sun is to be, torched.
Incinerated, yeah.
You got it, man.
Instantly.
There's no way, impossible.
Now, Muslims Muslims want to reinterpret this passage, right? And there's a lot here. They have to say that there is no setting place of the sun. He obviously didn't get there, and there certainly aren't people who are living there. So they try rather desperately, may I add, to say what this is talking about is Dhul Qarnayn coming to some body of water, and he sees a reflection of the sun in the pool. And so from his perspective, it looks like the sun is sitting in a pool. And that's all this passage is saying. This passage doesn't say he found a pool and he saw a reflection of the sun in the pool. He found the setting place of the sun, found it going down into a muddy pool. But assuming Muslims want to reinterpret this, you have to deal with Muhammad himself, because Muhammad also explains where the sun goes. And this part has nothing to do with Dhul Qarnayn. This is Muhammad telling one of his companions where the sun goes. It's not, Alexander the Great is looking at a pool or something like that. Got nothing to do with this passage. Exactly. So let's see what Muhammad says. Sunan Abu Dawud, number 3991. This, again, as Sam pointed out, is classified as Sahih. Abu Dar said, I was sitting behind the apostle of Allah, who was riding a donkey while the sun was setting. He asked, do you know where this sets? I replied, Allah and his apostle know best. He said, it sets in a spring of warm water. Nothing about Alexander the Great.
Nothing allegorical.
Nothing about a reflection. Nothing about a story. This is Muhammad talks to one of his companions. You know where that sun's going? I don't know. You know. You're the prophet. It's going to set in a pool. There's no reflection involved here. This is Muhammad telling his companions where the sun's going. Exactly, yeah. So if you're a Muslim, Sam, and you understand how to interpret the Quran, you have to say, the Quran says, Dhul Qarnayn found the place where the sun sets in a pool of water, people live there. Can I reinterpret this? No, because Muhammad gave me the interpretation. Muhammad himself told one of his companions that the sun sets in a pool of water, and therefore, as a Muslim, I have to say, I don't care what my teachers tell me. I don't care what anyone tells me. I don't care what the standard view of the solar system is. The sun sets in a pool of water, and I could actually get there if I traveled. I could go get on my bike and go find the place where the sun sets. And the sun must be small because it's setting in a pool. And I have to believe this as a Muslim. Because, my friends, if you have Muhammad's interpretation and you reject it, you've already rejected Islam. So you might as well go all the way. You can't
embrace a Quran-only position, like you said. Just for the record, if you're going to abandon the Hadith literature, then you do not have any way of demonstrating when the Quran was compiled, where it was compiled, by whom it was compiled, and what are these verses referring to without recourse to the Hadith literature. So if you're going to toss out the Hadith, you have destroyed the very foundation of the Quran. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. So you're stuck with this.